Good evening. Welcome to another episode of Dlptv. This is a weekly show, as you know, sponsored by the Democratic Labour Party. On Tuesdays, we normally have topics involving the more senior persons, except that we have two young persons here this evening. And then on Thursdays, we do a show called Youth Vibes. This evening, we're going to have a very special outreach into the diaspora, since we're discussing our relationship with the diaspora, and hopefully we will speak on rights of persons in the diaspora. Two friends joining us from within the diaspora. We have Anderson Connell, who lives in the UK, and Sue Harris, who lives in the USA. Our local audience this evening, to my right, she needs no introduction, absolutely no introduction, except that let us remind you that she's a lecturer at the University of the West Indies. Miss Felicia Dujon, welcome, Felicia.
Hello, good evening.
Thank you. And to my left, Mr. Damien Fanus. Damien is a young attorney at law. I well remember the first appearance on the show. We were quite fascinated with Damien's story. So welcome. We want to look at diaspora rights, and we want to look at life in the diaspora, what it has been like for those persons who left us many years ago. And Anderson, I trust you're hearing us. Welcome.
Yes, I'm at. Good evening. Hearing you clearly.
Sue, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
I think Sue is muted. Sue, I don't know if you're hearing me, but you're muted. Oh, we're trying to do that from our end apparently.
You're muted, Sue.
Yes. Yes. Sue, you're hearing us yet? I think she may be unmuted now. All right, we'll give Sue some time to become unmuted. Let us start with Anderson. Anderson, we're going to ask some broad questions. Life in the UK. I hope you don't mind me asking how long you've been there.
How have I been doing?
You've been in the UK.
Well, the UK has been pretty hot recently. Apart from today, we've had some rain, but we're doing well.
Okay, thank you. Is Sue unmuted as yet? Sue, you're smiling very sweetly. But
yes, can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you. Thank you. So that we're beginning on the diaspora.
Okay,
that will be the first part of the show. And we want to welcome. Hi, Sue.
Now? Good night, everybody.
Yes,
and to
Good
Felicia.
night. Good evening.
Thank you. Thank you. One of the introductory and standard questions. What's the weather like?
And to the other panelists.
What's the weather like, Sue? I don't think Sue is hearing us. And one of the other polite
it's
questions.
Beautiful today. It's nice and warm. It's a really beautiful spring day here.
Excellent. Excellent. I think she may be delayed. All right, we'll work on that. Anderson, what's your weather like in the UK?
Yes, we're hearing you.
Sorry, can you repeat, please?
What is your weather like? What was your weather like today in the UK?
Today it was a little bit rainy today. As I say, we had a little bit of sun started in the morning, but as the day went on, we started to get a little bit of heavy showers. I didn't mind the showers because I started doing gardening, so the showers were pretty good for the gardening.
You're sounding very English, Anderson. Gardening.
I started doing some gardening, yes. So the rain was good for the gardening today. See if we have.
So you're doing some gardening too? Good. Okay. All right. Tell us about life for a Barbadian. So we'll start with you this time. Let's go, ladies first. Tell us about life in the US diaspora for a Barbadian? I think so you may have to, our director is telling us that you may have to exit and come in again. Yes. Let's turn to you, Anderson.
Okay.
Oh, good. Anderson is picking us up quite easily. Life, another broad question, life in the diaspora for a Barbadian in the UK. What's that like? Or what has it been like?
Well, I think there is obviously depends upon where you are, but I think from a diaspora's perspective, generally speaking, I think many of us are, I should say, doing reasonably well. But not, I have to say, there is obviously some which are struggling. We find that, and that's no different from the rest of the society as a whole, where we've got, some pockets of society where are finding times a bit tough. But there are many of us that are doing reasonably well. And we fly the flag on behalf of our country of birth. We do our best to try also engage with the community to offer the skills and what we're doing. So overall, I think the diaspora are doing reasonably well in the UK.
Tell us about the question of solidarity among Barbadians who are in the UK. I know it's a big country. But are you experiencing satisfactory levels of solidarity among Barbadians who are living in the UK?
Yes, I think that's a very positive thing amongst Barbadians in the UK. As you would know, many you would know, wherever you are in the UK, particularly within England, there is in the major towns there are Barbadian organizations and associations, and they're all continue to fly the flag of Barbados and the culture of our country locally in the communities. But collectively, we come together for major events, and we will visit different towns for different events, support one another in that aspect, both culturally and and in other aspects.
Good. I'm going to ask you the impossible question. First generation Barbadians, and by that obviously I mean people who emigrated from here, went to the UK, not the ones who were born there. What numbers, approximate numbers, very difficult question, but what approximate numbers would you estimate across the UK? First generation Barbadians.
That's a good question for truth. I haven't looked at it recently, but I know it's quite a large number. I mean, for example, where I live, which is in Reading, which is kind of about 50 miles west of London. At one time, we had about 4,000 Barbadians here in Reading. Just one, and Reading is slightly smaller than Barbados, so you can imagine 4,000 Barbadians. So I know the largest numbers tend to be around London and so on like that. So I will not be surprised if we're up in about the 50s of thousands of Barbadians living in the UK.
Excellent. So you're hearing us now?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me well now?
Yes.
Oh,
Thank
beautiful.
We wanted to ask you similar questions to
Okay.
life in the USA for Barbadians who have migrated there. Good, bad, fair.
So generally good. I think you just asked Anderson about first generation. So I would say life is reasonably good, not necessarily bad. We just had a big election, so that changed somewhat some things. But in general, life is good for most of us who've been here for I've been here almost 30 years.
Okay. I was asking Anderson about Bajan solidarity, and I hope you don't mind using the word Bajan. It's more intimate.
Oh yeah,
Bajan,
of course.
yes, Bajan solidarity in the U.S. How is that?
Well,
Good.
I think where we are is Barbadians are pretty scattered here, but
Mhm.
in other states, let's say for New York, for instance, there are quite a number of organizations and clubs and groups and hangouts in basements and so on. So there is quite a lot of solidarity,
Oh,
specifically in the New York kind of area where there tend to be more Barbadians, Bajans.
I see. And when Barbadians emigrate, they hang out a lot more together. Obviously, you're a minority, national
Yes,
minority. They,
yes,
and a lot. I particularly like the idea of the basement hangouts. I know people get together and do the football parties and the basketball
yes.
parties you're talking about.
Yeah, well, that too. But like just recently, we were in New York, and somebody said, "Did you hear about somebody who does really good cuckoo and flying fish and well, you cuckoo with anything and Bajan food?" And when we got to the house, it was a lovely house with a lovely basement filled with Bajan goodies, and
Yes.
so that's the type of thing that I'm talking about. But of course, there's a lot of cricket hangouts and so on, especially in
And
Brooklyn.
did you mention rum? Did I hear rum?
Ralph?
Rum. R-U-M.
Rum.
Rum.
Oh,
Yeah.
rum. Absolutely. Of course.
Great. Anderson. Lot of Bajan hangouts in England. A lot of Bajans
Well,
hanging out together in England.
well, that is a popular thing in different parts of England. I mean, we have regular limes, taking place, whether it be London or Manchester or wherever. I mean, I know particularly in London, there's always limes going on, literally every Friday night or every last Friday in the month or something like that.
Mhm.
I mean, here in Reading, where I live, we just had opened up our first Barbadian run restaurant. And that Barbadian run restaurant, I think they're now starting to do a similar sort of thing on a Friday night. But they're doing well also. But we do hang out and we do get together whenever, and we don't need an excuse for that. We easily, all we want to hear about where there's a line, where there's a function going on, and they will well be supported.
And what about people keeping their accent?
Well, let's put it this way: if you can't get rum in the venues, you get it at someone's house.
I'm talking about accents. I get a sense that when Bajans hang out together in these big cities, you really hear the Bajan accent coming out
Yes,
when
you do.
they're hanging out together. That's true.
Very much so. Very much so. As a matter of fact, there are some of us that when we were together, I think we were still in Barbados. Many years ago, the accent and the language and the certain words that I wouldn't call on
No, please don't.
those words and phrases will come out quite openly.
Yeah. At these socials, do Barbadians talk a lot about, and it may be a sad topic, do you talk about home, back home? Because I imagine you still call Barbados home. Do you talk a lot about that?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Same for you, Sue?
Yes, absolutely. We talk a lot about home and reminisce a lot. Anderson, can I say that that we actually visited that Barbadian restaurant recently?
Yes, you can, and you certainly can. Sue came to Reading and had
Lovely.
a lunch with me at that restaurant. Sue and her
Yes.
husband and family, and I think you enjoyed it. Did you, Sue?
Yes, we did. The food I had cuckoo, and it was really, really good, like back home, like home. It was.
Okay. Permit me then to turn to our resident panelists for a very short while. And I want to ask them the pertinent question. Damien, you first. Do you have any close relatives who would have who emigrated to either UK or USA?
My grandfather,
Your grandfather?
my grandfather,
Uh-huh.
God rest his soul, Donnie King.
We want to be able to hear you a little bit better. I know you're shy.
Yeah. I think you need to be a little bit louder there.
But my grandfather, he emigrated some time ago, long time ago,
To UK or USA?
to the UK.
UK.
I had an aunt and a cousin, couple aunts,
Yeah.
two aunts who emigrated to the USA, and a cousin. who
You visited?
Never been to the USA.
Never been to the US?
Never been to
UK?
Oh,
Never
wow.
been to-
Oh, okay. Well, long overdue.
Yeah, we have to do that.
Long overdue.
Yeah.
Felicia, any relatives emigrated to the USA or to?
Well, to
UK?
both.
both.
I have a number of relatives, which is very strange. Is when I went to New York to study, I met relatives from a roommate
Oh, really?
who played cricket. I do have a family background, of course, my last name, but we have a lot of cricketers in my family. And so I met a number of family members in New York. The majority of my other family is in England, but my father, since he's also we have a lot of relatives in Cayenne, you would find a lot of them in France or Martinique or Guadeloupe. Yeah.
Back to you, Anderson. Felicia drew me on to the topic of cricket. And I know that I spoke to a Barbadian who subsequently relocated to Barbados. And he once told me that it was cricket around which people coalesced when, especially that 1966 tour, that tour really brought Barbadians together and West Indians together in England.
Yes.
Our 3-1 victory on the cigar field, Sobers, in 1966. The role and the importance of cricket in the lives of Barbadians in UK. Anderson, tell us something about that.
That is still very much one of the if you like, the binding stones of Barbadians here in the UK. Across every year, there are normally a couple of major cricket events that take place. That brings together Barbadians from all, and as not just Barbadians, but other diasporas as well from across the UK to attend these events. I mean, for example, just recently there is a National Council of Barbadian Associations. They held what's called a little bit of BIM, and that normally which takes place in Leicester, and that normally includes a cricket match between a local team and collection of Barbadians. And again, that's well supported. And the same happens in London between June and July. We have again a major tournament where you have a select team coming from the Barbados High Commission together with a select team made up, and again they play, and the attendance is normally somewhere in the thousands.
Really?
Thousands that attend these matches, and those are just local events that take place. But obviously, today you've got the West Indies are here in the UK at the moment, and they're well supported, even though they're giving us grief, but they're still well supported.
It's been about close to 30 years that we haven't done particularly well in England. We've had some successes in between, but the Bajans are still attending test matches in England as they were in the 1960s.
Well, I think what we've seen now, I think there is obviously a Barbadian that's playing for England at the moment. His name escapes me, but he.
Jacob Bethel.
Yeah, I think. Again,
More than one, actually, Bethel and the fast bowler.
Yeah, and then obviously there is there is obviously the fast bowler that played also for him. He's not playing currently, but he's been playing for England. Over the years, we've had obviously people like Roland Butcher and others that.
He was the pioneer actually.
Yeah, and so there've been quite a few Barbadians that's played for England. Across the counties, I think since the counties have changed the structure in terms of the number of overseas players that play in county cricket, they don't have as many Barbadians now playing in county cricket. But there is still, a handful of Barbadians playing across the leagues, the county leagues.
Yeah. So your experience in the US would have been somewhat different because you don't get test cricket there. And I can tell, and Anderson would tell you that particularly in the 1960s, 70s, possibly the 80s when we were still doing well, you would have had thousands of Barbadians going up and West Indians going off to see the West Indies team play against England. Yours would not have been a similar experience in the USA. Yours probably would have been Barbadians and West Indians, Trinidadians, Guyanese in particular, they love cricket. You would have been going to local games, possibly in the New York district, and watching Barbadians play matches among themselves. That has been your experience, cricket experience?
No, I don't know anything about cricket at all. My husband might know more, but I am not. I would go. I would have gone, from time to time, but it would have been just to socialize and to meet other Barbadians. But cricket, that would come under my husband Barclay.
But you've gone to some of the games.
Yeah, some of them, but not a lot of games.
Yeah,
But over the years, there would have been something happening with cricket and local teams and so on, and you would have attended in Brooklyn or and some other places too.
Well, tell us about the atmosphere at these games.
Oh, it's very festive. There's a lot of rum and a lot of talk and meeting up of old friends and that type of thing. And I haven't seen you for years. Where do you live now? So it's a lot of very festive, very friendly, very warm. You tend to as you were saying before, we tend to talk a lot about home and catch up on people that you maybe went to school with, that maybe living here now that you didn't know that were living here. So it's that type of atmosphere, very warm, very friendly, very festive.
Yes. I wanted to ask you about the diaspora across the US. And to ask, Anderson told us that Reading would have had a lot of Barbadians. He said 4,000 or 5,000 back in the day.
Yeah.
Where is the locus, the main point of Barbadian location across the US diaspora? Is it New York, I would imagine?
Yeah, I think I don't have figures. The last time I checked, the concentration would have been in New York, specifically Brooklyn. But
Yes.
you can still find Bajans in a little bit in the Bronx. In Connecticut, you'll find a concentration of Barbadians. The DMV area, that's Delaware, Maryland, and Virginia, in that area. Miami for sure.
Really?
Fort Lauderdale. There's a quite a big concentration of Barbadians. So you were asking about numbers. I think the last number I saw could have been between maybe close to 10,000.
Okay. You left out my favorite American city.
Where's that?
Well, you left it out, so obviously it's not yours. Down in Georgia.
Oh, Georgia. Oh, okay.
Yes.
Yes. Actually, yes.
And I understand you're having Barbadians who are leaving New York and retiring in Atlanta. Is that?
Yes.
Is that?
That was a trend prior to COVID. I don't know if it's still a trend now because some people went down there, then they came back. But yes, that was a big trend, going down to retiring in Atlanta.
Yeah.
And actually, quite a number of young adults, young professionals were going into Atlanta as well.
Now, England has tended to be a place of earlier occupation that would have started, as I said on a previous occasion, maybe when Russia in 1950-51,
right?
The Barbadians would have gone to New York a little later, I think, although you had some going before that. But in modern times, the exodus to England would have been around 1950 and beyond. New York a little later. I want to ask you and Anderson about the contact. Obviously, you've kept contact with people here in Barbados, between US and Barbados and UK and Barbados respectively.
Right.
Has there been transatlantic contact? Have Bajans in the US been in contact with Bajans in the UK?
Anderson, you wanna?
I will have to say that contact between Bajans and in the UK and Bajans tends to be on an individual basis, where you have like I know
Yes.
individuals in the US, and we make contact, but I don't think that we have collective structures to create the relationships and exchanges between the US and the UK. So I think normally sometimes, as I say, normally be individuals that will be in touch with other individuals more so. That tends to be the pattern.
Yes.
Yeah,
Your experience too?
yeah, I agree with Anderson. Yeah, it's individual and it's more uh, based on if you have relatives there in England that you tend, you would tend to stay in contact. But yeah, there's no, as far as I'm aware, there's no structured, like organizations between the two countries where, with Barbadians in England and Barbadians in the US. They may be, but I'm not aware of them. And
I see.
the contact between the two, as far as I know, is not that popular.
Can we explain that on the basis of cultural equivalencies, that perhaps the English culture and the American culture don't offer a lot in common with each other?
Perhaps.
For living in both places?
I somehow I don't think so.
No.
I think there's a divide in the cultures between the two, because being coming from England, you have a very kind of hidden way of doing things. Whereas the American culture tends to be more upfront in doing things. So I think we have this thing that's rubbed off on us that talk about stiff upper lip and that kind of thing, and we will give you a smile, but behind we will probably be cursing you. Whereas the Americans will probably do it more frontal. I think that so there's a slight difference between the cultures in that aspect.
Yes, yeah.
So you wanted to add something?
No, I was just laughing because he's absolutely correct. Yeah, we are more we are direct.
Okay. I wanted now to take it a little more serious.
Okay.
In our central bank reports, the bank normally calculates as part of our national income money sent back from England and the US, and we're very, very grateful for that in Barbados. Is this something that is still happening among Barbadians in the UK and in the USA? We call them remittances.
Remittances, yeah.
Sending monies back to relatives who are here. It must be significant that the central bank calculates it.
From the US perspective, yes, there is still that we do still send money home, to our families. We do, and we do the the barrels and the boxes and so on. So yes, that is still very prevalent. Sending money back home and taking care of your relatives. Yes.
Yes. Anderson, same UK.
I think over the years, I mean, when I came to England in the 70s, the early 70s, I know it was something that was always talked about, sending remittances back to back home to your family and whatever. But over the years, I think Barbadians in the UK quite a lot have actually some have resettled back in Barbados, some have purchased property or land or whatever in Barbados, so they tend to send their remittances more for the upkeep of their properties or whatever in Barbados. I don't think the trend of actually sending large remittances back is as it was previously. But bear in mind now we have a lot of offspring, and offspring have grown up now, even though that they have this connection with Barbados, they're not in the same mold as their parents or grandparents of sending remittances. Plus, on top of that, the society here is a struggle in itself, like most places. So many people are finding it just as tough to survive on just a little bit of income that they have. Remittances to Barbados is not probably as prominent as it used to be.
Let's talk about this idea of home. you're in the USA and you have these lines together, these Barbadians who get together. Same in the UK, you have these lines, Barbadians getting together, and you talk about home. But let us extend that. Do you think that a lot of people in the US and in the UK have this desire to come back to Barbados and to settle here permanently? Is that a desire, or have people settled into the US and say, look, this is home for me, I'll visit Barbados? Or in the UK, this is home for me, I'll visit Barbados. What's the situation there? You go first, Sue.
Okay. So I think a lot of us, we think fondly of home, about Barbados, and some of us want to come back and settle, after we've retired and so on. But it also depends, because we are thinking about healthcare. We're thinking about life in general, and we compare. Can we have the same standard of living, if we are back there, and we start to think of lots of things, and healthcare is top of mind, well, for a number of people that I've spoken to. But yes, we want to come back. We think of home, but we're thinking of those, some of those other things, that may or may not be where we'd like them to be when we think of home.
Yes, and of course, technology has made the distance shorter. I mean, you can, like what we're doing here now. You can talk to your people here easily, WhatsApp calls, video calls, so that the distances have been shortened by technology. So that perhaps the desire, that sentimental desire to come back to Barbados and resettle, is not quite as intense. Is that it?
I mean, yes, the technology is helpful, and yeah, it adds to the convenience. But we want to be home. We want to be at the beach. We want to, you want to enjoy the things that are home. That is very uniquely Barbadian, that you've missed all of these years. So yes, technology is there, but you want to be home. You want to be there.
Now, England is a longer distance, Anderson.
Yes.
Are you having, would you say the Barbadians in England have this desire, this intense desire to come back to Barbados and live?
I mean, over the years, what I've seen is that there's obviously, as we reach retirement age and so on, there is many Barbadians that I've met and I'm heard of that wants to return back to Barbados and resettle, in their later years. But there are always the challenges, and I think you've already highlighted some of them. And quite a few that I know who've resettled ever so often. They're back here for one reason or another. And basically, the challenge is obviously fitting in with some people who've lived here for 30, 40 years. And they find that some of them get back and and some of them go back obviously with the mindset or, that of how they left Barbados. And basically, when they get back, some of them are obviously, taken aback by what they're finding. This is a changed society. And so they find it, some of them find it difficult. But I do not think that there is a large, if you like, migration of Barbadians back to Barbados, I should say. And I think what we now have to look at is probably maybe our offspring. They may want to say, well, look, can I go now settle in Barbados? So some offspring are now actually taking up that opportunity to go and settle in Barbados. And quite a lot of our elders are, for whatever reason, are not taking up that challenge as great as they used to in the past. There are many reasons for that. Probably haven't got long enough to obviously go into those reasons. I mean, for example, I was speaking to a couple of gentlemen only last week. We're talking about going back to Barbados, and the first thing that they said to me, no, the crime down there will got me. They're concerned about the crime. Barbadians are concerned about what's happening in Barbados at the moment, particularly around crime and so on. And I think the other area, as you mentioned, is around healthcare. Healthcare here is it's a challenge also, healthcare, but in terms of getting healthcare needs, it's much easily met here than it can be in Barbados.
And sorry, if I can add to the other thing that we also talk about a lot is the ease of doing business or the difficulty of doing business and getting things done when you're going back home. That's also a challenge.
Yeah. I wanted to say something about coming back here, because it is likely that if you're away, let's say 15, 20, 30 years, you're probably still seeing Barbados through, as they say, rose-tinted glasses. And then perhaps you come back to Barbados, and as Anderson said, there's the crime, there is the decline in healthcare. Are you finding that you're coming back and seeing a different society and not in a good way?
Well, when
Yes.
I go back, personally, when I go back, I really haven't got a problem going back to Barbados at any time at all. I always feel comfortable. But I think the issue for most people is the fact that Barbados is the size of Barbados in terms of not only in area but also in population. And the fact is that the crime level in itself magnifies itself many times. Even though you may have the same level of crime in the UK, but it doesn't magnify itself so much in the UK as compared to Barbados. I think it's because of the size. And so everyone feels as though threatened by it. Like I sit here in Reading, I'm not threatened by crime, even though crime is high. In England, that's because I feel that I'm sufficiently far enough from it not to be threatened by it, even though that I'm always at risk when I go out. But I think in Barbados, you're more at risk because of the density, the close density of the population and so on.
I wanted to ask the question then to both Sue and Anderson. Coming home to Barbados now, do you feel unsafe as opposed to like 15, 20, 30, 35 years ago?
I'd say yes, you coming back home now, and well, at least in the last, let's say 4 or 5 years, you are more you feel a little bit, you're uneasy, and you tend to plan your outings in a very different way than you would have 5, 6, 7 years ago. So, for instance, if you're going, let's say you're going to something at in Kensington, we actually plan where we're going to park, how we're going to park, and like map it out. And we wouldn't have done that before. So you're feeling a bit more threatened, or you feel like you have to be. I mean, you always, anywhere you go, you'd have to be careful. But you feel it's not, there's definitely a change. There is that change, and you tend to plan your outings in a different way.
I really don't have a problem when I'm in Barbados. What I do find effectively, you're exposed and your minds are open to it because of what people are telling you. So I mean, I'm not afraid to go anywhere. But however, when I'm there, I will always be told, be very careful where you go. So you always get that message in your head telling you from someone else, don't go there, be careful where you go there. And so you're much more cautious, if you like, in traveling around.
We're getting a message from Shirley. Damien, with younger eyes, is going to read it.
Okay, so this is from Shirley. I have been coming home every year for the past 40 years, and it's not the same. Yes, I'm afraid, especially at night. Even during the day, I try to be vigilant.
So and Anderson, you heard Shirley?
Yes.
Every year for 40 years. What's your comment on Shirley's perspective?
Well, I think that, as I said, everyone will obviously see things differently and have different experiences, and that is actually not dissimilar from stories or I have heard from others. So I think it is the individual in how they feel where they are. It's also the media Because, for example, if I pick up the Nation and I turn the page or Starcom, literally every page is about crime. So they
Yes.
publicize more crime in the paper, so that makes you more scared because it
Yeah.
tells
It
you
was
more
your
crime going on. There's no good stories as such being published in abundance. It's mainly
yeah.
crime in abundance. It's published on these media outlets.
Yeah.
But you
So
have
I,
home.
sorry, go ahead.
Anderson, you were saying in spite of that, you individually you can make yourself happy when you
Yes,
come.
yes.
Yes. Yes, Sue.
Yeah, so I agree with what Shirley said. There is, as I said, there is a difference, and before you kind of had you would have had a happy-go-lucky, I'm going home. If you were coming from, well, as I was before coming from New York, I'd be like, this is nothing like New York. But over the years, you really have to pay attention, and especially at night, and coming home late. You do, for our experience, my husband and I, we have started paying more closer attention to our surroundings.
Yes. Let's hear from Judy Moody. I've been thinking a lot about returning home to retire. I have to admit, I have some concerns, especially the state of the healthcare and rising crime. It's making me reconsider if it's the right move. And we're so happy to be hearing from people who live in the diaspora. Perhaps Judy will tell us which city she's in when she writes to us again shortly. Any comments? Judy is saying that, as you said earlier, the healthcare system here is a bit of a disincentive. Crime is a disincentive. And she's wondering, yes, Judy is wondering if it is the right move. If you had to advise people like Judy, what would you say to her? You come occasionally, Anderson, you come occasionally. You probably look at it objectively. You're seeing the prices, you're seeing the relative safety, not as safe as it used to before. But if Judy wanted to come and relocate, what would you tell her? Would you discourage or encourage?
I will never discover
Yeah.
anyone from going to Barbados.
Come on home.
I think Barbados is no different. Barbados is no different to any other society where crime exists. So there's always crime, and you always have to take precautions wherever you are, whether you're in the US, whether you're in the UK, Germany, or wherever you are. Crime doesn't.
Judy says she's in New York. Thanks, Judy.
Yeah. So I think it's a case of being cautious on your movements, but I don't think that that crime that should stop you. I think, for me personally, I think the issue of crime, we all have to deal with it. Society in itself, through its media, do not help. So the media in itself makes us even more scared to travel.
Yeah.
Because if we actually follow the media, we will not step foot out the door. Because the media that makes crime very high. Because they use it to publicize their turn. And I think that way
I'm sorry. I want both of you to respond to Vihoy. And Vihoy said, well, I don't know if it's Victor or Victoria, that they feel safer in New York City than in Barbados. Your comment, Sue?
Yeah, well, you hear that a lot, and yeah, people do say that in these times they do feel safer in places like New York or Connecticut or Miami. I've heard that before, and to answer the question, if somebody was coming back home, what would you say? I'd say, come on, come back home. I would never say not, you shouldn't go, but it's just that you have to have a slightly different mindset. So yeah, I've heard that before, and sometimes my husband he does say that he feels safer here than in Barbados at times.
Marie Watson is making a very interesting comment. Marie says, when we go to the supermarket, the prices are higher than Rhode Island.
Yes.
Give us a Rhode Island report, Sue.
Well, I don't know about Rhode Island, but I can tell you that yes, when you go to the supermarket, and I think relatives and friends always say to us, do not come here and start saying, but what it costs over there. They
Yes.
say, it gets them annoyed. But sometimes, like you'd see, for instance, you'd see a bell sweet pepper and it would be $7. That is
Mhm.
utterly incredible. So yes, the when you go to the supermarket, it jolts you a little bit. It does, even though things are getting expensive over here. But when you're in Barbados, it really shocks you at
Yes.
at the prices that you're seeing. It is shocking.
Marie again is introducing a topic that I want to hear both of you on. Marie says, my family and I stay at a hotel. I'm not going to give the name. I'm not going to advertise the hotel. But we're finding that a lot more Barbadians are coming home on holiday. And they're not staying in the village that they left. They're going to hotels. What's that all about? We
No,
thought we wanted to see the black belly sheep in the pasture and to walk down the little rough cart road. But you're going to the Hilton. What's that about?
No, we always stay with our relatives. Always stay with relatives.
Okay.
What we would do is sometimes we would carve out 3 days at a hotel, but
I
we
see.
always stay with relatives. We feel like it's it's just home. We would never ever come to Barbados and stay 2 weeks or 3 weeks just at a hotel and just visit our relatives. No, we wouldn't do that.
Anderson, you go back to the village, or you're at Sandy Lane?
Well, give me all the money. I think I'll prefer to stay in the village.
Lovely.
So I quite often, I think it's only one occasion we came back to Barbados, my wife and I, and we actually stayed at the Crane, and that was for a particular reason, because we were going down to family wedding and so on. But generally, I always stay with the family or between family and friends.
Yeah.
You can't beat the experience of staying in the village. It's nice staying in the hotel if you want to be pampered and don't want to do anything, or just wants to make your bed up for you, things like that. If you're lazy, you're not going to get the same. You're not going to get the same comforts in terms of conversations, and so on. But I like the village.
Yes.
Lovely. I want to go to a topic. So you wanted to comment as well?
No.
I wanted to go to a topic that includes Felicia and Damien here. And it's been a very controversial topic around here over the last 2-3 years. This question of voting rights for people in the diaspora. Should I begin here at this table? Damien, what's your views on people in the diaspora exercising or asking for the right to vote?
I think it's a right that should be granted to them, because you want to maintain that cultural connective tissue.
Yes.
Because maybe you've moved over to the UK, you've immigrated to the US. That doesn't mean that you're divorced from what's happening here in your country, and you want to have a say. So I believe that there should be some form of avenue where those persons can exercise their constitutional right as a Barbadian to vote, even though that they may not live in the country anymore.
Thank you. Felicia?
I think it's
interesting, controversial topic.
It is controversial. Why? Because we want to know the parameters. Because you're not in the country itself, we want to not put any person or the constitution itself at risk, because you do not want anyone interfering with the elections or anything of that nature. It is their constitutional right. I think they do have that right, but we have to ensure that the provisions are, I think it's transparent. If it's not transparent, people may assume that it's not legitimate. So we have to find, with technology, we have a government that speaks about computerizations of everything else. I think if we have consulate generals in every location, we have consulates, we have embassies in those countries, I think we can set up something where it is legitimate. I think there's a sense of transparency where our citizens, regardless of where they are, can participate. I think it's a constitutional right. But then we have a government that deprived people from voting during COVID. So it tells us that, you know, those kinds of anomalies it has to be, and it is a question I wanted to ask. How do our citizens in the diaspora, do they come home to vote? Are there any kinds of mechanisms in place for them? Do the government provide any kind of provisions for them? Because during times of elections, we hear in other countries, people take number of flights booked just to come home and vote and return back to whatever respective country. So I think it's something that we as a government, an incoming government, we have to think about. When you think about persons in the US having 4,000 persons or 10,000 Barbadians, I think these are issues that we need to think about. If our citizens are sending remittance to us, they're providing that kind of intervention, financial intervention, then why are we depriving them of political participation? I think is something that we have to seriously consider.
Okay. So I'm going to come to you on the understanding that an American anywhere can always vote. Wherever he or she is, they can vote. You've heard Damien's view, you've heard Felicia's view. Your view on Barbadians in the diaspora being allowed to vote? Yes or no?
So, short answer, yes. And I think for the reasons, some of the reasons that Felicia outlined, I think that, you know, we participate, we send our remittances, we are, you know, we're there as a backbone for our country. And I don't see, I don't understand, you know, any suggestion that we should not be able to vote in our country. I think we absolutely should vote, and yes, with parameters or with guidelines and so on. But yes, we should be able to vote. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Anderson, you're on the yes team or the no team?
Well, I have a very strong view on that particular issue in terms of voting, because remember a few years ago we had this particular commission for the constitutional reform came to the UK, and basically to seek the input of Barbadians living in the UK, and I actually authored a paper submitted by Barbadians, a number of Barbadians here in the UK, to the commission. And in that report, we clearly state the voting in the new constitution, the voting rights to Barbadians living abroad should be enshrined in that constitution.
Thank you. Felicia used the word parameters. So I want to ask Damien, should there be conditions set, like property ownership, limited residency requirement? Let's say you have to be here 3 months in every year, or you must have a property here valued at above X amount. Do you think it should be conditional?
No, I don't believe it should be conditional. I believe that once you are born here, that right is enshrined as your constitutional right to vote. So whether you are in Afghanistan or on the moon, you should be able to cast your vote and have a say in what happens in the country, especially if you're someone that you may be living abroad, but you have family here.
Yes.
And you, as Felicia said, you send back your remittance, and you want to know that things are still going well, even though that you're not present, but you will still probably come back and settle. So you want to still have that say. So I don't think it should, the only parameter it should be is that whether you were born here, or even if you were somebody who probably were naturalized, that right should also still be established.
So you extend it to naturalization.
Naturalization as well. So that is the only parameter that I would say it should be allowed.
Yes.
Your view on that. Coming to you shortly, Sue.
Well, once you're a citizen, you should be permitted to vote. The Constitution gives you that right. That is your fundamental right.
Yeah.
But I also wanted to throw, just being a devil advocate.
Please.
We speak about regathering. The question is, what is the role of the embassies? What are they doing? What is their role? What is their specific roles in terms of how do they assist citizens? Are you only assisting them to get passports? What is their essential role? And I think these are the kinds of questions, because we're seeing a government that is opening embassies in different countries,
Yes.
and we want to know what is the specific roles of our members in those countries. So these are the kinds of questions I think it's important, because we are funding those embassies, we are funding whatever country that we are in, so we're funding them, but we want to know how are they being of service to our citizens in those countries. And this is, I think, these are the kinds of questions that we need to ask, because right now we're seeing those embassies are really facilitating regathering, FET movements and things of that nature. And I remember there was a specific one where they had the Barbados Labour Party logo on a national matter. So these are the kinds of questions I think we have to really seriously consider when we think about foreign kinds of intervention for our citizens. We cannot just treat them as individuals, as citizens out there only when we need them, but facilitating the fundamental and constitutional rights. I think it's something that we need to think about. I think the foreign ministry has to look at that more seriously, because they are our citizens. We're not just there to give them passports or if they die or something like that, or something of that nature. I think there are more very serious permanent issues that we can look at in terms of how we can facilitate that kind of linkage, because you cannot be a citizen and you can't vote. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't really make sense. So I think we have to think very critically on that.
Thank you. Sue and Anderson, we are coming to you on that, but I'll introduce it to you by telling you what Vihoy is saying again. And Vihoy, thanks for your activism on the program. Vihoy agrees with Damien that there should be no condition. If you were born in Barbados, that is it. You should be allowed to vote. You go first, Sue, please.
Yeah, I think the idea of requiring, something like ownership of land, that starts to get that scent of slavery, kind of like you have it doesn't
Well, sorry, it takes you back to the day you had to own property in order to vote in Barbados.
It harkens back to that. So a little distasteful. And I don't think there should be any. You're born in Barbados. People who are from the Caribbean can vote from other islands. So why, if I'm born in Barbados, why can't I vote?
What about the residency requirement? Those who will tell you, look, you want to vote here, have some proof of location here. And suppose somebody tells you, look, I think you should be here at least 3 months in every year. What is your response to that?
Well, I don't know. I'm not sure that would, because then you're going to be saying, well, then you only want retirees to vote. Because who else would be able to come home for 3 months, to vote? So, like, are you saying, well, is it gonna be age related? Because unless you're independently rich, you have to work, and you're not gonna get 3 months off every year.
Let's do some more devil's advocacy then. What about those persons who will say to you, look, you're voting in the US and you're voting here. You have two locations in which to vote.
That's all right.
Yeah, dual citizenship.
Dual citizenship. Yes. Anderson?
Yeah, I mean, I feel strongly that if you're born in Barbados and you're a citizen of Barbados, that gives you the right to vote regardless of where you reside. I don't believe that there should be strings attached or conditions attached to say, like, you must own this, or you must have this, or you must be here for X amount of time. I mean, if that was the case, I'm sure that other countries would do that. Other countries where they actually allow the foreign citizens to vote, there are no conditions put around them apart from them being citizens or of that particular nation. So I really I will always advocate and for the right for a child or a person of birth of Barbados to be able to vote regardless of where they reside.
Shirley is saying, yes, we go on. Let me read Shirley first. Shirley is saying, I was born and grew up there. I should be able to vote.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
There's some
there.
I don't see, and I believe. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, if we look at this and take this in a slightly different way, and I know we can't compare Barbados with France or anywhere else, but if you're born in France and you travel and live somewhere else, you're allowed to vote. The same is true if you're German.
Mhm.
You're allowed to
Yes.
vote. Yeah. The same is true with the US. You're allowed to vote. I know they're all larger countries and different things to that of Barbados, but we talk about democracy and the right of birth. And the right of birth should enshrine you in the rights of that of the constitution of the country. So you still have the right to vote regardless of wherever you live.
I don't know if you can see what Vihoy is saying. Vihoy is saying, I can't be a citizen of Barbados only when the country needs something from me. I'll come back to our resident panel here. Damien, you want to respond to Vihoy? I wish Vihoy would tell us his or her name.
I honestly cannot agree anymore with such a statement. It gives the impression that you're only good for one particular thing.
Yeah.
But
Remittances.
Yeah. You understand me? So it gives you the impression that once you've left, that is it. You're divorced from everything that happens in the territory. So this is something that probably needs to be addressed in future debates.
Yeah.
Future.
Yes.
Yes.
If I
Yes, please. Felicia, then we come back to you.
I think one of the other concerns that we have, because of the way that elections is called, we do not know when an election it is solely based upon one individual who gets up one day and decide this is where, as opposed to having very clear dates as to when we have elections. So there are countries where they're specific. We have an election every 5 years on a Tuesday of that month. As opposed to us, is very arbitrary. And I think that's important. So if we knew when election would have been called after 5 years, June, the second Tuesday or the third Wednesday, then perhaps our citizens in the diaspora would be able to make preparations. So they know every 5 years around the same time, this is election day. So I think these are some of the concerns, and I think it was in the report as well, that we need to have those dates. It has to be clear that we know exactly what. It cannot be left up to one person to decide on when election is called. And I think those kinds of avenues, those kinds of recommendations must be taken seriously, because it gives persons the time to prepare. Okay, if it's 5 years and this is the date, then they prepare for that date and make kind of provisions for it. So I think these are some of the concerns we can look at as well.
Thank you. Nigel Newton is asking a very interesting question, and it's not unrelated to what we're discussing. Nigel is asking, do you think we should have an Alien Land Holdings Act to prevent the ownership of land, to protect the ownership of land by Barbadians? And the corollary of that, obviously, those pieces of legislation normally prevent non-citizens from owning land. When I was studying, I know St. Lucia had such legislation, Felicia.
Yes.
And Trinidad, I think, had it as well, that land ownership was restricted to citizens.
That has changed.
It has changed.
Yes.
Well, you have citizen by investment now.
Oh, yes.
So that so that you can pay for that now.
I think the answer to Nigel's question will be easy. I doubt anyone will propose that we have alien land holdings legislation to prevent ownership of land by non-nationals. It certainly has been one of our investment strategies here in Barbados, to attract people to invest here. So you have to give them the right to own land. And any comments, Sue Anderson?
I think that similar to something like what Anguilla has, I think they have something where you have to own it in conjunction with a citizen. I'm not sure. Are you familiar with that, Ralph?
Not sure, Sue. I'm not sure about Anguilla at all.
Oh, okay. I'm conflicted with that. What Nigel Newton is saying.
Well, I mean, I feel that land ownership and major property ownership, there should be a restriction around that in terms of who owns it and who can buy it. Again, we made that recommendation in the report in the constitutional reform review, and basically what we said is effectively major, particularly major historical buildings, etc., and so on,
Mhm.
Not be owned by any foreigners. It should all be owned by Barbados. If they can't be owned by Barbadian individually, it should be owned by by Barbados estate. So there should be a trust estate
Mhm.
country that owns
Yeah.
particular buildings, and rather than the foreigners owning them. In terms of land purchase, again, I think there should be a limitation about who can buy and own land in Barbados, and I think you should be living in Barbados, and there should be a time limit as to how long you should be living in Barbados before you can actually own that land.
Really?
Yeah, I agree with that,
You agree with that?
Anderson. Yes, I agree with Anderson on that point.
That it should be a limited right.
Yes,
Yes.
for non-Barbadians.
Okay. I think I just saw a Margaret Gittins before we come to Everyday Handyman Ottawa. Interesting names. Margaret Gittins was saying that she has dual citizenship and she votes here and in Canada. That's
Mhm.
interesting, Margaret. And we come to Everyday Handyman Ottawa. You want to read that one, Damien?
So everyday
It's too
first
far.
part. Okay. Right. So everyday Handyman Ottawa. He says, what about the people who are living the daily reality and paying their taxes? What about creating a specific type of constituencies from for the people in the diaspora? And the second part, online constituencies that won't impact the will of the people living and paying taxes. Doesn't matter who you are or where in the world you are, home will always be home.
Well, according to principles of sovereignty, you cannot have a constituency outside of Barbados. The Barbados Constitution has no application beyond this geographical place called Barbados. So I think that's the easy answer. Handyman, Ottawa, and I assume Handyman is in Ottawa. Behoy again. You want to? Or Max? Oh, Maxine McLean. Let's hear Maxine.
From Maxine McLean, does anyone have a realistic estimate of the size of the Barbadian diaspora in the UK, the USA, and Canada? I suggest you do a bit of the research on recent census data, compare those of voting age.
Maxine, we discussed that earlier, and Anderson tried to do an estimate, certainly of the population in Reading, and I think he said it was 4,000. But I think that census data may be beyond this panel that we have here. You're talking about the originals, the first generation, and then the second generation, and then the grandchildren. So you're talking, I think you would go into millions, wouldn't you think, Damien?
Yeah. Mhm.
So you think you'd go into millions?
Yeah, in the US for sure. Yes.
Yeah, but Felicia is telling us that this is census data that the embassies
Yeah, it should be done.
or the consulates
Should be
should
done.
have,
Okay.
rather than just the mundane business of passports. It should be conducting a census. Sue, you think so?
Yes. Yes, they could. Well, in the US they can get that information.
Mm-hmm. You see,
Well,
Maxine is
parts of
making
it.
the point that if you introduce voting for people who were born here, you could have a situation in which more people outside vote than who live here. And that would create the kind of imbalance that you probably don't want. Excellent intervention, Maxine. Always the voice of reason. That let's say you have 150 New Yorkers voting, not living in Barbados, and 75,000 people who live here voting. And you get a government that's elected in New York.
If I may add to Maxine's, if I can add to Maxine's comment.
Yes, please.
I think it's going to be difficult now to estimate the number of Barbadians living in the UK, and one of the reasons for this is that local authorities now do census, and they don't. As before, when they did the census would say which country you originated from. But unfortunately, now censuses don't actually go down to country level or island level. since it only goes to are you originally Carbine? Are you originally Black Carbine? Are you originally, and so if you try to pick out from that census how many of them are Barbadian, that are it's going to be very difficult to do. So I think that the way that censuses are done now, and not every Barbadian here is registered with the Barbados High Commission. So again, the Barbados High Commission will have a challenge in identifying the number of Barbadians now living in the UK.
And let us remind ourselves that Maxine was a member of the Constitutional Review Commission, and she says she actually interviewed Bajans in the diaspora, so that hers is hands-on experience, and she recognizes the practical and political problem of voting in the way that Damien is suggesting to us. Yeah, that we could have a government elected by people who don't live here,
But it's
or
still,
who don't ordinarily reside here, to use the legal expression.
but it's,
Sorry, Felicia.
but I'm saying it's still the constitutional right that whether we want to look at it from that perspective or not, they still have that right.
They still
They,
have
they should still have that
Yes.
right to make that choice. We cannot ignore that they are Barbadians, even though they live outside of Barbados. I think they should still be given
the
that right to do that.
Supposing then we tell Maxine, look, if they, and this is devil's advocacy again, if they enjoy the right, let us tax them. Because the Americans do that. An American living anywhere in the world, they allow him to vote, knowing that they're going to tax him. So it has financial implications.
I want to read the comment from the Democratic Liberal Party of Barbados. What you can look at is the number of second-generation Barbadians who actually applied for passports and ID cards.
Yes.
Any comment?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
believe that is. I believe that sounds sound in it.
Yeah, if I may say, here in the UK, I know that, and I will give a little bit of credit to the Barbados High Commission. They've been going around in the events that they've been having. They're bringing the actual passport office and the behind-the-scenes offices out to the community, where they're pushing the idea of getting second and third generation Barbadians to complete for citizenship. And to complete so that I can get passports and as well as ID cards. So there is a drive, I know, around the UK, as well as the Barbadian Association does try to push that as well to our second generation.
Thank you, Shirley. I'm not going to read what you say, but and just let's tell Maxine is us to make the correction. She was on the Parliamentary Reform Commission.
Correct.
And I mistakenly said the Constitutional Reform Commission.
Okay.
But Lemuel Tull will tell us that neither has come to anything. Sorry, Maxine. The government seems to have put both on a shelf. Although they were supposed to bring the Parliamentary Reform Commission business to Parliament last Tuesday, and somehow it disappeared. I have my own views as to why, but sorry, Maxine. Vihoy, but people are entitled to all benefits, including social security and medical benefits. So those people. Oh, those people are entitled to all the benefits. I raised the issue just now, which exists with the Americans, and I don't think I got an answer from Sue or Anderson. Somebody says, "Okay, you want to vote? Let us tax you." Let's hear you.
It depends. It depends. It depends on what you're taxing us for and at what levels.
Something called world income. Any income you make, any part of the world, you're taxable by the U.S. government as long as you're an American.
That's correct. That's correct.
Something equivalent. Should Barbados then do a similar thing? Implement a world income tax? Because as I've said, the Americans. I mean, it brings a lot of money into the American treasury.
I don't know what that money is going to be used for.
So you're avoiding the question. You want to vote? Can I tax you?
Are you advocating that if we make earnings in the UK, we should be taxed by the Barbados government? Is that what you're indicating?
Yes, you want. Look, this is devil's advocacy here, and some person in Barbados is saying to you, Anderson, you want to vote, fine. I give you the vote, but I want to tax you as well. What's your response?
If I make earnings in Barbados, even if I'm living abroad, I have no problems in paying taxes for any earnings I make in Barbados. But I think to go beyond jurisdiction, to charge you for earnings made in a foreign land, I think that's
Right.
a bit too far.
I wanted to read Keith Padmore. How about having a requirement that they be living in Barbados for a period of time in order to become qualified? And I think he needs to vote. And we did
No.
raise that earlier.
No, we
No.
said no.
No, we
No
were
resident.
born there.
Not even a week, not even one visit, as with the green card stipulation in the US. I don't know if it still exists.
No,
Not even a visit
No.
per year.
no. We're sending our money all the time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Very good.
We're sending our money all the time.
And you have not only that birth certificate, but a baptism certificate, which they don't issue anymore.
And a passport, ID, which you have to pay for.
Tell us then. I keep hearing this statement about I'm sending you my money.
Yes.
What is the general sentimental position of Barbadians overseas towards Barbados? Is the affection still there?
Of course.
Of course.
It is.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yes.
We do all we can to ensure a better Barbados.
Yes.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we try to fill in the gaps because some their relatives or friends who it's tough. It's tough.
Mhm.
And even in terms of sending barrels, even though that's getting to be a bit the way how it is now, sometimes you say, well, instead of sending a barrel, because that has become or is becoming more prohibitive, you just send the money that that what you would spend for a barrel, you just spend the money, you just send the money instead of doing a barrel, because that process is becoming very difficult.
Yes,
And
yes.
we had a Caribbean island who is I think they're not charging for barrels coming in or something they're doing that's that is helpful, because it looks almost like if you're trying to discourage us from sending barrels.
Mhm. Apart from which, I've told Sue that some of your prices there are becoming fairly high.
Yeah,
So
prices are becoming high, but when you do the calculations, it still might be better to buy it here and send it there because of the sizes. So you might get a 20-pound bag of rice. That's just an example for $6, and family can share it up between two different houses. So that it's still worth it.
okay. You're on a political television channel here, so I'm going to read what Vihoy just said. We love our country. I don't like the direction it is going. Could you speak to Vihoy on that, please? We love our country, and I think Vihoy is in Toronto.
No, New York.
New York.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't like the direction it is going. Comment, please.
Now, where would you start? I agree with Vihoy 100%. There are a lot of things that, I mean, yes, this is a political show. There are a lot of things
Yeah,
that
so
we're
you can't
seeing
become
that we
political.
don't like.
You have to like. That's what I meant.
We're seeing things that we don't like. We mentioned crime, the cost of living,
Yes.
and I don't like that in 2025, the number of people you're hearing who are saying they're scared to speak out.
Yes.
That is a concern. You know,
Yes.
we grew up in, you know, growing up in my community, we knew who were B's, we knew who were D's. They would, you know, kind of cuss one another at election time. Say what they want. You know, I didn't agree with this one or that one, but you were free to disagree or to don't like the other side. And but there was no, I have never seen this level of fear in Barbados, and that is very, very concerning to me. I don't like that, you know, the direction that is going, because I've never seen that. You know, you were always, you know, it could be heated arguments, or maybe you wouldn't speak to your neighbor for, you know, a little bit or something, but that was it. You were never so scared like, I'm going to lose my job, I'm not going to be able to eat.
Yes, yes. Let us come to the table here. The question of fear, Damien, you're seeing it?
I'm seeing it because I realize that politics now in Barbados has become very tribal.
Tribal.
Yeah, it's the tribalism has I think it's grown as social media technology has gotten more advanced, because now not only do you see individuals who fear being for retribution in regards to the way their political leanings are. On social media now, you can be made fun of. You could get clipped up, made a meme.
Bullying.
Bullying.
Internet bullying.
Yeah, the internet bullying is on a different level now.
Yeah.
And some person they don't even need to know you. They just need to know your political leaning.
Yeah.
And as soon as you give your opinion on something, you're dismissed. And then probably just made a meme of funny video, you know what I mean? So that it's used to in a sense silence you.
Yes.
So I've seen the tribalism. I've seen it, and it's growing more and more as social media gets more rampant. And I guess that is why individuals are afraid to speak up, and probably even afraid to get involved in elected politics.
Yes, yes. And I wanted to say, Damien, I read a comment from Lemuel Tull some minutes ago, and Lemuel was telling us about the cybercrime bill. And listening to you, the cybercrime bill, to my mind that the government attempted to criminalize people for exercising their right to freedom of speech. You came back just in time, Felicia. Cybercrime bill, educators, you're against it.
Well, of course, not because I think the argument for the government is for the protection of citizens. They felt that there are people that go on social media and harass and bully persons. So I think that's one side of it. And I don't think anyone in any right-thinking Barbadian would agree to anyone harassing anyone or child pornography. So in the legislation, there are those provisions that we agree to. But we know how this government works. They're very subtle in the way that they infringe on the rights of citizens. And so when you give very open and arbitrary laws, it could be misinterpreted. It could be interpreted in various ways. And I think because of that kind of ambiguity, and I think that was the major problem with this bill, is because of the ambiguity, so that the government or whoever the legislator is will say, well, this is what we meant by harassment. This is what we meant by censorship. This is what we meant. So there's no clear guidelines as to what exactly the language, the legal language, what it means for the average citizen. So if it means that I post a meme about you and you get offended or you are disgusted, it's not clear. Anybody, you know, a word like disgust, it could be arbitrary. What may disgust you may not necessarily disgust me, but to put it in law, it becomes problematic. And I think one of the things that I do remember, if you're a legislator, it's your responsibility that the language is not ambiguous. And so it's very important that we look at that. And again, I think what the most important aspect of this bill was how they criminalized the individual. $70,000. Yes, $70,000 for a citizen. We can barely afford to buy bread in the supermarket. And you're telling us that you're going to charge us for harassment. But I specifically believe, my personal views is that that particular bill was designed to censor citizens, particularly around elections, where you know during election time you find people do like what they did in the by-election. They create all these memes about you, they say things about you, and it's interesting that even during the by-election, you were seeing supporters of the Barbados Labour Party engaging in acts that would violate that same cybercrime bill. And these are, I think, the kinds of issues that we need to raise, that they themselves are participating in it, but they want to legislate it. And I think it is important that that persons recognize that. And it was kind of interesting that the Prime Minister came out and said that persons are using AI to mimic her voice. So now she understands what cybercrime is about when you speak about artificial intelligence. So it may not necessarily be an individual that is creating whatever mischief, but it could be the use of those types of technologies. And I don't think our society, not as yet, have really understood what the limitations and, of course, what AI can actually do. Because I don't need to be in the same space. How are you going to criminalize me if I don't live in Barbados? It doesn't. The law does not extend. And I think you made that point in Parliament, that you can only criminalize someone in the country. You can't go to someone in the UK or the US. And they try to give that impression. But again, this government is very deceitful. So I never take anything they say seriously because we know how it works with the law. So I think that's something. And I'm glad that we haven't heard about it. So I'm hoping that it stays wherever in whatever black closet that it is and just remains there. Yeah.
Anderson, this question of fear, you're outside the forest and we want you to look in and tell us how we're living. Do you sense that there's fear in Barbados?
Sorry, can you repeat, please? I missed the first part.
Oh, the question of fear. Damien referred to the question of fear that people feel in Barbados. And Sue talked about it as well. And Sue made the point that it may affect people's jobs, people's job prospects. You come back here from time to time. Do you get a sense that people are fearful politically?
Yeah, I think there's two areas, and I was quite interested in listening to Felicia particularly talking about the cybercrime bill. I think Barbados at the moment has become very you're slightly fearing. People tend to speak together in groups, but they will not speak publicly. It is this like they become very tight-lipped. They see things are wrong, but yet they will keep very tight-lipped. They will so I think there's a fear of being called out, a fear of being something going against you, and I think that particularly when you look at the cybercrime bill, that bill in itself is particularly written in a way that leaves it open to interpretation. So which means that you and yourself, you're not quite sure where you're going to break the boundaries of the bill. So before you know it, you've broken the boundaries of the bill, and you could be called against that. So I think there's a real fear factor that exists in Barbados. Having said that, when I look, and particularly something that really disturbed me recently, and I give Felicia credit for this. The last by-election, for example, and I believe that what we saw in the last by-election with that MP, now we have now new MP, is taking a group of school children to wave flags and to welcome them coming to Parliament. And I'm thinking, where is Barbados going with this? You remember years ago when the Queen or the royal family came to Barbados, you used to take us along and we waved flags, and then we watched them running. That to me is really going backwards in terms of colonial views, and I think that should never be allowed. No school children should be allowed to welcome any newly elected parliament into Parliament. That should never happen. And the question is, that set a precedent. Does that mean moving forward we will now see every time an MP gets elected and going to Parliament for the first time, we will all have a group of school children standing there waving flags to welcome that MP? The question is, what is the education are we giving those young children? What are they learning from that? What are the parents gaining from that?
Indoctrination.
The indoctrination. I was just about to say that it is more insidious because they weren't doing flags of Barbados, of the Barbadian flag. It was red and yellow and
Look at
there's
the
no
adult.
amount
Look
of
at the adult.
excuses. Yeah,
Can
there's
you
no
see the
amount of.
photograph?
Yes, I can see it
And
with the
can you
red
see
and
the
yellow.
She's a red. I
It looked
know as a
it looked
parliamentarian.
almost like China, for
Yes,
God's
yes,
sake.
yes.
It looked like China, like what
And you
happens
know,
in China, and this is a slippery slope.
yes, it is. It is. I mean, we talked about the right benches, and now it's come to this. And
Red schools.
people are not only afraid. Well, people are afraid to speak against the government. But Felicia was brilliant on radio yesterday and on social media. It is as if people are afraid to agree publicly with the
Yes.
opposition views. They agree with it privately, but a lot of people are afraid to come out and say, I agree with the opposition. And that's the extent of the fear. It's quite oppressive, actually.
But it's our
I have
job to do
never
that.
seen Barbados like this. I've never seen it.
No.
We still have the picture,
Sorry,
David.
Felicia.
I was saying it. I think it's our duty to highlight those kinds of unethical human rights violations. It's our duty. We cannot stay silent. When we remain silent, it means that we give the government consent to infringe on the rights of citizens, including the rights of children. And I think one of the major concerns about that is that the minister should be, again, reintroduced to the Education Act, because clearly he does not understand the Education Act. It gives you very clear guidelines as to what is your authority and your mandate over the school children and the premises. Most of us do know that when a child enters the school premises, that the principal, the Ministry of Education, they have legal guardianship, more or less. And one of the things that you will see when you see something like that, you have to speak about it. Because when we see children are vulnerable. And if and this is one of the things that we did speak about, that it infringes on their rights of expression. Can a child in that condition or in that environment or in that space feel safe enough to say, well, I don't want to raise that red flag? What does the red flag mean? What does the yellow flag mean? Elections was over on the 21st, but it seems that we're still in campaign mood. And this is something that we really need to speak about. And I think what is very concerning is that we have a CEO of education who is endorsing that kind of behavior, who is also around with the minister, canvassing with the minister, more or less, because I think as a civil servant, her role is to ensure that these kinds of matters does not occur. And in open view, and I'm glad that the press took that photo, because they would have denied that it actually happened. And I did read an article where the press made a statement that the children were raising national flags. And as you can see, there's I don't know, well, perhaps the national flag has changed. But as far as we know, that is not the national flag. And I think the people of Barbados will hear me sooner in the future on this matter, because this is a clear violation of children's rights. It violates UN conventions on the rights of children. We haven't heard the Child Care Board on this. We haven't heard UNICEF on this. And it's clear that the children, and I think some persons were talking about parental rights, that perhaps the parent did give permission. But if a parent is giving a child permission to be outside Parliament with Barbados Labour Party paraphilias, what they should have done is to send their children in normal clothes, not the school uniform, because the uniforms are a representation of our state institutions. So that anytime we see children in uniform, we know that that child is part of an institution, a learning institution. So I think there's the lines that have been broken there. They have very clear guidelines that have been breached upon. And I think, and I will say it again openly, that the Minister of Education and the CEO violated and breached the Education Act. I will also go a little bit further to let them know that the parents or whoever endorsed this and agreed to it should be held accountable. And I believe an investigation should take place in terms of who provided the instructions and approval to have school children during school hours waving partisan flags outside of Parliament on that day. And I think it's very important, because what it does, it sets a very dangerous precedent. And what it also says is that if you do not support the Barbados Labour Party, what about persons that are non-partisan? What about persons that support different political parties or, it doesn't have to be the Democratic Labour Party. And they know that their children are in school, that their children could be pulled out of school or told that they're going to a tour or something. And then they're outside plastered on social media and in the public press with Barbados Labour Party flags flying out. And I think it's very important that I do understand that persons are fearful now, but we need to speak about it. We need to protect children. We need to remind the minister of his role. And if he does not understand it, I think he will learn it very, very soon, because these are not the kinds of matters that I would like to see. I don't like to see when children are taken advantage of. And this is not the first time that this government has done that. We saw it under K. McCauley when she had the IDB survey, when they ignored the rights of children and parents. And we're seeing it again, where children's rights have been infringed upon, and we're not hearing anyone speaking on those matters. And it just brings me back to something I wanted to add. When the Child Protection Bill was perhaps wanted to be passed, Felicia Dujon spoke about it. And at the time, many persons did not understand what I was trying to share. Many public, I got attacked for it. But later on, the Child Care Board came and added their voice. The Barbados, Attorneys Association came out as well. Bar Association came out as well. And a number of organizations came out. When it comes to children's rights, we do not negotiate. We do not negotiate on those things. And if we have to make a very clear mandate that the minister, please do not use our children for any kind of canvassing. Election is over. Please, your mandate is very clear when it comes to the Education Act. If you do not have it, I can email it to you so that you can brief yourself again, because this has been a violation. If that happened in any other country, he would have had to resign the following day. As simple as it is.
And Felicia, I wonder if a grievance complaint cannot be made to the UN, because there are specific regulations with UNICEF that speak against the exploitation of children, the abuse and exploitation of children. And this is a clear case of political exploitation. I mean, look at that photograph.
As I was saying, I have given them until this week to respond to it. Other than that, I will take the necessary actions on this matter.
Yeah. Lemuel was telling us that, these are people who painted a school floor, right? Foundation school.
Yes.
During the conference. I mean, it's getting as bad as that in Barbados. These insidious incursions against the rights of people and extending it to children. No wonder people in Barbados are so afraid. You think any of those parents or any of those adults there, whoever they are, would have had the courage to say no? Or do you think any of them, Felicia and Damien, do you think any of them wanted to say no?
I have another question I would ask. Do you think any private school would allow that kind of behavior with their school, with their children outside? Private school, because
ask the other question: would they have asked the private school to do it?
No. And I think as a parent, it raises more fundamental questions to me, because it raises the question about children being in an environment and not being able to speak freely. And was that infringed upon them? What was told to the children? Who decided it was okay or permissible to have children stand out? Do the children understand what happened on that day?
Well, let us ask Stu and Anderson then, by way of comparison. Have you seen this kind of thing in the UK or the USA?
That will never happen in the UK.
Never.
Thank you very much.
Never.
There are
Never.
and 200% organizations will not allow that to happen.
It's happening in Barbados.
No,
Why?
because it's allowed to happen. People aren't, maybe, and parents aren't speaking out. As you said, they're scared. And we can't forget Spring Memorial.
Yes. And one
But this would never happen in the US, no.
Well, this is for Anderson particularly. A parliamentarian got up in Parliament and said the Ministry of Education could not be held responsible for what happened at Spring Memorial. I had to remind her that under Westminster, the minister would have had to resign if something like that had happened. It has nothing to do with direct participation. It has to do with responsibility. You bear responsibility for anything that happens in your ministry under your control.
Yeah, but I just
And so
want
by
to,
convention, sorry, Felicia, by convention.
I just
Yeah,
want
you
to
go.
remind them that the Education Act is a law.
Mhm.
It is a law. It is not just some random policy. It is
Yeah,
law.
yeah.
And if you breach that law, there are repercussions for it. And this is why I'm saying to the public, there was a breach of the Education Act. And if they read the guidelines or the mandate of a minister, you will see exactly what I mean. And as I said before, I am giving the Ministry of Education some time to investigate. I'm saying this week to investigate this matter, because somebody has to account as to what and why this happened on that day. Somebody has to make an account of it. We do not have a problem with children understanding civic engagement and political structure. We don't have a problem with that. We do not have a problem with the children going in and congratulating the minister. This is wonderful. This is our people. But when we do partisan politics with children, the innocence of children, I think it's fundamentally wrong. And I think some investigation has to be done.
Let us pause and say good night to Shirley, who is in Greece and got into bed only at 3:33 a.m. Shirley, you'll see the recording tomorrow. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Sorry to have kept you up so late. It's not our fault that we do a good show.
Can I just add one thing? Can I just add one thing to what?
Yes, please, Anderson. Yes.
For many years, I've been a member of the Child Safeguarding Board, and as a member of the Child Safeguarding Board here in the UK, the Child Safeguarding Board have a responsibility for the safe and well-being of the child, and making sure that there's no abuse of child. I'm sitting now.
I'm sorry, what board is that?
Sorry?
You said you were a member of a board?
Yeah, the Child Safeguarding, the local Child Safeguarding Board.
Ah, thank you. Thank you.
And the local Child Safeguarding Board has a responsibility to ensure the protection, safety of a child. What I saw with my hat on, looking at that picture, that was clearly an abuse of children. And therefore, the Barbados local Child Safeguarding Board should have been picking that up and acting swiftly to amend what has taken place.
Yes. Vihoy is reminding us that the child care advocates, Vihoy is in New York, would have gone crazy and the media would have been at it every minute of every day. I agree with that. The networks would have had some free news over 24 hours.
I have a question.
Yes, yes,
Rod.
please do. Yes.
Does anybody feel that there will be a plan to change the flag of Barbados?
Well, on the 30th of November 2021, was it? They attempted to change the name of Independence Day to Barbados National Day. All of the other Caribbean countries that have gone republic do a Republic Day that is separate and apart from Independence Day. For some reason, we wanted to the government wanted to obliterate Independence Day and call it Barbados National Day. So you start with the name, and then perhaps next you go to the flag. Anything goes. Lemuel was telling us about painting the foundation school raid. These children are accompanied by people in raid. You're painting the benches all over Barbados raid. You go to Oystins and you paint Oystins in raid. And of course, one of the BLP slogans is paint the town raid. And one used to think that it was a harmless slogan. It has now become literal.
I am very suspicious of that act with those kids and the yellow and red, the yellow and red pieces of flags. I am very suspicious of where she is going with that.
Suspicious is an understatement, Sue. We should be fearful as to what is happening to this country and what is happening to our young people. These are what? 8, 9-year-old children.
It's almost the young they go behind.
They're like sponges. They're taking everything. And raid will be the color of choice for them as a political statement. They're being taught political statements at the age of 8, 9, and 10. And that's the danger.
Indoctrination.
Yes. And that's not only indoctrination, but it is exploitation, as Felicia said, of a vulnerable human being. They cannot process politically as we do. As far as they're concerned, these are nice, famous people hovering over them at a big building called Parliament. Yeah. Let us move to the Dominica. Man, you've been so good. Let us go to Dominica. The issue with the Prime Minister having spoken at a partisan rally in Dominica. You've been a little quiet, Damien.
Yeah, I was waiting for
Bringing
this
out a
issue.
Yeah.
political rally.
I was waiting for
Hollering.
this issue. So when I last checked, I don't think that the Treaty of Chaguaramas has been repealed, has it?
No, it hasn't been. Look
So
at it
when
today
I-
myself.
So when I was looking
Lovely
at the
perspective.
functions and the powers of the conference itself,
Yes.
they are the supreme organ of the community.
All right. You want to give Sue and Anderson the facts before you go into the law? Tell them what is happening in relation to the Dominica issue.
So apparently there was a political meeting where the Prime Minister of Barbados attended and apparently spoke at, from what I
A
gathered.
partisan political meeting
And
of the Dominican
the
Labour
Labour
Party.
Party,
Yes.
of the Dominican Labour Party. And what I said, it was kind of partisan in a sense, because then when you look at the two names, the Democratic, well, in a sense, the
Labour.
Labour Party, the Labour Party itself,
And
you
the
would-
colors.
and the colors itself, right, are
Red.
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 Red,
Sea of
isn't it?
red.
Sea of red.
Just like here.
I didn't even take
Yes.
that into consideration.
Yes.
It is
same
red.
colors.
Is red. So when you look at the powers of the conference itself, they automatically tell you that they are the supreme organ of the community, which is a very powerful,
Mhm.
very powerful body.
Mhm.
And then the chairman itself wields a lot of power and influence.
And the chairman of Caricom.
The chairman of Caricom.
So you're following us, Sue and Anderson?
I am. Yes, I am.
Yes.
So
Yes.
when you look at
Mhm.
their policy direction in regards to community, you would think that obviously they would focus on regional security, economic policy, climate change, not the interests of a political party
Mhm.
in one CARICOM country.
Yes.
That is something that I find to be very dangerous. And then we're setting a very dangerous precedent if a chairman can go to or lend support
The
to
chairman of Caricom.
a chairman of CARICOM to one party because she believes that, it is her mandate, her
Mhm.
remit. She can do whatever she feels like, or he can do whatever she feels like, depending on who it is that is the chairman at the point in time.
Mhm.
From when I read the article, the ERC, the Economic Reform Commission,
Mhm.
they said this never happened before. A chairman has never done that.
Yes.
Could you
Yes.
imagine if, like when the Democratic Labour Party, when they were in power, if they had a chairman
Mhm.
or anyone come and speak at a
Mhm.
political party,
Mhm.
you would see pitchforks, people will be hanged, people will be looking to basically as they protest.
Mhm.
There will be protests in the streets.
Mhm.
And I believe that this is something that needs to be addressed, and it's something that sets a very dangerous precedent,
Mhm.
and it's something that should never ever happen again.
Now we've had prime ministers visiting other party conferences, and there's something of a convention or protocol that you speak politically, but you try to rise above the partisan divide. In other words, your speech becomes statesman-like.
Statesman, and to benefit.
We've had the Guyana president come in here a few months ago
Yeah.
to the Barbados Labour Party conference. You remember that one?
Yes, I believe.
And it was very partisan.
Yeah, because you would think that you would, if you're going to speak at a political meeting, you
Mhm.
would put the community first,
Yes.
the region first. You're representing
Precisely.
CARICOM itself.
Yes.
Even if you're not a chairman, but you're coming to speak at a partisan party,
Yeah.
you are a representative of CARICOM, and
Yeah.
you are rising above.
Rise above the partisan debate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's something that I frown upon, and I think that's something that should never happen. Should have never happened.
What is the recourse, Damien, for Caribbean people? Just protest? The opposition party
I think
against it?
that in Dominica there was they had changed legislation in regards to protesting,
Mhm.
right? So they think of kind of silence them in that sense. So even then, no, your right to protest, your voice is being silenced.
Mhm.
So then you have to ask yourself, what do the people have
Mhm.
to address these types of issues? And if they do attempt to address these issues,
Mhm.
what would be the retribution? What would happen to them? Would it
Was
have-
there a letter?
There was a
Somebody-
letter. I think the ERC, they had wrote a letter, and
The ERC is,
the Electoral Reform Commission.
and that's the official electoral body in Dominica?
I do not believe so. I think it
that's
is.
a NGO.
Yeah, I believe that it's a separate.
Yeah, but they still have the right to protest.
Yeah, they have the right. They have the
Yeah.
right to speak their concerns, to voice their concerns.
Yes.
Right. But at the end of the day, when you're silencing people and you're dismissing them, what recourse do they have?
Yeah. Felicia, you can't stay silent.
Well, I'm afraid to speak.
You are? Or we come back to you then?
No, I will just say something if I must,
No, okay.
as a Caricom person.
Okay.
I should say something. No, I'm good. I'm all right. But I'm just
Okay.
saying that a very important point that you made is that part of our Caricom mandate is regional security.
Yeah.
And as we've seen in terms of high levels of crime, not only in Barbados, but in other territories, the RSS had to intervene on those matters. And so when you have the chairperson going on a platform and saying, well, we all Labour Party governments and this is what we do, what it also says is sends a message to non-Labour citizens of other countries that this is their mandate and that we have to be more vigilant. I think personally, the chairwoman, it's her prerogative as to where she chooses to speak. But I think that was very poor judgment as someone in leadership role, and you know that there are other persons within that same society that may not support. It is their democratic right not to support whatever party they choose not to support. But to make such a bold statement that this is what Labour Party people do, this is us, and this is my mandate, and what we need to see is that she made it very clear that Labour Party governments are connected in the region. And that's a very powerful statement, which also means that what if a government, say, for instance, hypothetically speaking, that the Labour Party in St. Lucia loses the election, or the Labour Party in Dominica loses the election, or the Labour Party in St. Vincent loses the election, are you not going to work with those governments that come in? That's from another party and you're the chairperson. How do you think that person or those government will perceive any kind of negotiation or intervention you wish to do? So what it actually does now, it tends to undermine her authority, because now people are seeing that you're biased towards a particular political party, and are they willing to work with you? And so it raises more deeper questions within the region. So I think what other leaders in the Caribbean need to take note of is that the kind of chairperson that you'd want to lead.
That was my next question to you, Felicia. Isn't this a breach of the mandate of the chairman of Caricom?
It is a breach.
Who should naturally
It is a breach. And I think at some point, the leaders of the Caribbean, at some point of Caricom, will have to come together and recognize, because at the end of the day, I hope I made that very clear. What you're saying is that Labour parties in the Caribbean, in Caricom, are the ones, because that's what she basically said, are in solidarity with each other. Yeah. So that means any mandate that you have, you will address it directly, or you'll ensure that there's an advantage point. And we saw what happened in Dominica in terms of the riot. And these are very, very, very important, particularly when we talk about regional security with the levels of crime. And if you're telling people that, so what it means that anyone in the Caribbean that does not support the Labour Party is at risk, more or less, because your chairperson of Caricom does not support other parties. And that is what it's reflective on what she did on that day, standing on a platform and endorsing the Labour Party. And I think it's a dangerous outlook for the Caribbean right now for us.
Tyranny has gone regional in the name of the chairman of Caricom. That's where we are, Sue and Anderson. I hope you now have an awareness of what happened here.
Yes, I'm fully aware. I'll tell you why I'm fully aware, because I have actually been following it myself.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
yes, I have been.
Yeah. I think my point was, and I think the only point I want to make is, how was she invited? Was she invited as the leader of Caricom? Was she invited as the governor of Barbados, prime minister, or was she invited as the leader of the LP? So there's three caveats there as to which particular hat was she invited under.
We're absolutely certain she could not have been invited as chairman of Caricom.
Well, you never know. But the question is, if she's invited as the president of the chair of Caricom, then I believe that she is basically abused her power.
Not for the first time. So?
Yeah, I just think that she is continuing to push the envelope to see how far she'll go, or how Barbadians and, for that matter, the Caribbean will react. In her, it seems to be some kind of, I'll use the word, diabolical plan. And Barbados, Dominica, St. Vincent, St. Lucia, Guyana.
Yeah.
I want to ask a question, if you don't mind. It also means that certain policies that is here may be transferred somewhere else. Are they going to pay criminals $8,000 a month in those countries as well to reduce crime? Work here. So, I mean, these are the kinds of questions, because as I said before, it seems that when you look at the other labor countries that are labor governed, you will see that the crime level is very similar. So what are some of their policies? Do you think that some of the policies that we have from Barbados, the high taxes, in terms of crimes, how we deal with crimes, the high cost of living? And I think one of the things that I would like to advise opposition leaders in those CARICOM countries to take a look at that, because perhaps this is what is happening, that they have the same similar policies. They're already working closely together. So see what is happening in your country. Sooner or later, you'll be hearing your government paying persons to reduce crime, 8,000 or whatever that it is. So
And what about the cybercrime bill?
Well, these are
Yeah.
also, I think it's important that we see the similarities, because she already highlighted, I want to say the chairwoman highlighted that Labour Party governments work together. And if they're working together, if it means economic development, if it means regional security, what are some of the plans that they have? So we want to see what it looks like. And I think what regional governments have to do, or regional opposition parties need to do that are non-Labour Party government, is to take a deeper look as to what the chairperson was saying on that platform.
So thanks, Felicia. Are people in the diaspora, you think, sufficiently sensitized to these issues?
Some of them are. Some people are saying, they're not paying that much attention, but they're slowly paying more attention now. And especially with the recent by-election, I think a lot more people started paying attention.
Anderson?
Yes, I mean, over here, I know that things that are happening are very spoken about in different chats that I'm in, with local chats within the UK. So yes, there are actually noticing very much what's happening around the Barbados and in the Caribbean. Quite a lot of now the Caribbean news, we get the Caribbean news ourselves, so we're pretty much aware of what's going on. The question is whether many of us are acting on the news that we receive. We may just be getting the news but keeping quiet as usual.
Yes.
I have a question that was raised with me, which I would like to ask, which is slightly different, I'm afraid.
Yes,
because it's getting on for me a little bit for me now. And the question I want to raise that was asked of me, given the crime that's going on in Barbados and whatever, isn't it about time that the BBF, the Barbados Police Force, start to raise their profile and do active stop and search? Because if guns and those things are easily to get hold of and walk around with, should there be more stop and search? Stop and search is an issue in the UK. It's also an issue in other parts of the world. So the question was raised with me, do we think it's time that Barbados Police Force start to engage in stop and search to start to arrest the crime that is taking place with guns?
Anderson, the allied
They're concerned
question.
with tint.
Yes, the allied, we were to come to tint, but the allied question, Anderson, is this. And I hope I'm not breaching any national security secret, but as many persons as recruited into the police service, a lot are leaving. I think there was a case in which we recruited 50, and within a year, about half of them had left. And I'm not talking about people who retiring and leaving. I'm talking about young police recruits spending a few months in the police service and leaving.
Wow.
And yes, and it has been one of our statements, political statements, that the government seems to have lost the confidence of the police service. The relationship between the police service and the government is not as harmonious as it should be, I don't think. They have been treating the police service very badly in terms of remuneration, in terms of delinquency, in relation to the payments of money owed. They paid them only when we mentioned it on the platform during the last by-election. They had promised them since the budget speech of 2024, which was 14 months before, and only when it became an issue on our platform, the decision was made to pay them. So that the police, and not only the police, but the nurses, the prison officers, these are people who are being treated very, very badly by this government in terms of conditions of service, terms and conditions of service, monies owed, promises of promotion, those promises not delivered. A lot is going wrong within the public service in Barbados. If you come to the public service, the top of the public service being populated by consultants, frustrating the career civil servant, I can go on and on. It's 9 o'clock though, and we're going to have to do this again. Sue and Anderson, we want you to commit on air to a part 2. Can you give us that commitment?
Yes. Yes.
Right?
Definitely. Part
Given the
2.
commitment, it is not a commitment unless you tell us when.
You give us the date and we'll make
Okay.
it happen.
Okay, we'll be talking.
Anderson?
All you do, put the date forward.
The director says next week. And the producer, he says next week too. So clear your calendar, please.
Okay.
Parting words. Ladies first, Sue.
We love our country. My husband and I, we will continue to support Barbados. We want the very best for Barbados, but we just like to, to say to Barbadians, you cannot co-sign your own demise.
Thank you. All right, let's come to the local panel. You go first, Damien. Parting words. You were excellent tonight, as always.
I want to say to my my fellow Barbadians and my fellow Democratic Labour Party members that this is going to be a long haul fight, and it's either you're in it or you're out.
Yes.
And if you want to see change, you have to be in it, and you cannot be intimidated. You got to keep strong and fight the good fight, and someday we will prevail.
Thank you. Thank you. Felicia, parting words.
I just want to share my gratitude and love and support for our citizens in the diaspora. Keep on the fight, and hopefully one day we'll be able to get you to vote, because I believe it's your constitutional right. And I think more should be done at the consulates and the embassies, not just giving out and issuing passports. And so I have told the Barbadian citizens, we need to continue to remain strong. If you don't think that you have a voice, you are sure to call us at the opposition or the Democratic Labour Party so that we can stand up on your behalf. And a special and warm love and gratitude to the people of St. James North.
Yes.
They've caught my heart. So I just want to say a pleasant good evening to everyone, and we will see you soon.
And Anderson, we get to say the best for the last. That's you.
I think, first of all, let me express my thanks for obviously inviting me to be part of this particular show this evening. It has been a pleasure to actually share with you, some thoughts and views, and also to listen and learn from what others are saying. I want to be able to say to my fellow Barbadians and members of our party and supporters, because we mustn't forget supporters. We all have a duty to look after one another. We all have a duty to look after Barbados and to make sure that Barbados goes from strength to strength, but not at the expense of forgetting the lowest level of citizenship, if I may use that phrase. I think every man, every citizen of Barbados is valuable, and they should all be cherished. For me, I think it's important that we work together to try to seek to address whatever the issues are that is confronting us from moving forward. To my fellow party members and so on, I'm going to make my first public statement. I think we all need to make a statement about our party, not about an individual. I think we need to ensure that we are supporting the party to make it stronger and better to take over the rails of government. If we start to continue to fight with each other and to just focus on the individual, we will get no further. We will go 2 steps backwards. But once again, thank you all, and I look forward to joining you again at some point soon.
Thank you very, very much to all 4 panelists. This has been a very important moment in Barbadian and diaspora relations. This has been an excellent 2 hours. And thanks again. You've made the commitment. The producer and the director, they both say that we are going to do this next week. Please, Sue and Anderson, feel free to bring along some persons with you. This is an important step. Yes, please, I mean that. This is an important step in mending these various societies together through good people. So thanks again. And
Thank
good
you
night.
all. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Okay.
Thank you and good night.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
And watch us on Thursday. We'll be seeing you on Thursday night. You vibes.
Yes.
Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Okay.